Our next topic of the day is speed and clarity, the only vaccine? Speaker for this session is Mr. Srikanth Velamakani, who is the co-founder, Group Chief Executive, and Executive Vice Chairman of Fractal Analytics, one of the leading artificial intelligence and analytics companies across the globe. Fractal's vision is to power every human decision in the enterprise. Srikanth is the chairman of Cure AI, a leading healthcare AI company that plays a pivotal role in diagnosing and treating diseases like tuberculosis and COVID-19, who will be joined with Mr. Ashok Sethi, Resource India Chairman and Global Chief Information Officer at Publicis Group. And the anchor for this session is Mr. Sudhir Singh Dungarpur, Partner and Leader, Digital and Experience Consulting at PwC. He is a leader for digital and experience consulting at PwC in India and is responsible for the strategy and growth of the digital consulting business for the firm.
In the previous sessions, you have obviously had discussions around how you will survive or even thrive into 2020, what the roles of gadgets are, what is the future of offshoring. And in all these discussions, obviously these have been very interesting discussions with a very eminent panelists. What we wanted to do in our discussion is really make it very focused on how we in our organizations are dealing with this, what is required by the industry, and especially what is of importance to us technologists and how is it important for us. So we wanted to keep our discussions very focused on this. All of us know that our organizations, whether it's our customers, our own organizations on how we are dealing with this, or at homes, our families, our children, the schools that we are working with, everyone is dealing with this in a very different way. And everyone at some levels have adapted to the changes and adjusted to the situation. And there are new ways of working in this environment. And there are several examples that all of you must be having at homes, right? Everyone today is also speaking about that speed and clarity is the way forward. And obviously in our panel, we wanted to actually discuss this because there are obviously discussions around, is direction more important than speed? And how do you really quickly put that direction together? At the same time, a lot of people are talking about experimentation, about taking that first leap forward. So before you actually get absolute clarity, and with whatever uncertainty we are dealing with, what should be our right approach? And to obviously put this context, we have a panel, and I have with me Ashok and Srikanth, who are going to be helping me in this conversation. And what I would do is really quickly, focus on three parameters. One is what is happening, and I'm sure all of us know. We will speak very quickly about what's happening in our organizations. What is really required? How should we be dealing with it within our industries? And lastly, what does it really mean for us? Because at the end of this, how is it really important for me or for any of you with the jobs that we are doing, with the uncertainties that are there? I think that's really important for us. So with that, perhaps, Ashok, I can actually, ask you the first question. When we, everyone is talking about clarity, and obviously we know that every organization and every manager and every person in the management is dealing with obviously a whole lot of uncertainty. No one has been there before, right? How's your organization dealing with the present situation? And what do you see with your customers, how your customers are dealing with it, or other stakeholders in the industry dealing with it? And perhaps, I want you to open up the discussion, and then probably Srikanth and me can add to that.
Sure. So good afternoon or good evening, everyone. I just want to give you a context of what my company is, the size, and then it'll actually help you paint a picture of where we are, what we are really trying to do right now. So we are the third largest global communication company in the world. It's a services industry. Our focus is on creativity, media, data, and digital side of the equation. and of an annual revenue of about 9.8 billion euros. We are in about 120 countries. So as soon as you touch 120 countries, the impact is felt across the globe. And I'll talk about where we are there. The other interesting fact that I just want to call out is that within the advisory board that we have about 50% are women. So we believe that they are an important power within any organization. So is the case with key leadership. You are 39 to 40% of the people are women. Now let's talk about in a services industry where we are and what's the actual impact to us. So these are unprecedented times. These have happened in the past as well. And we have a very short memory. The unfortunate part is it's a very short memory. And for us being in about 120 countries, our first focus was our people, right? We wanted to make sure that their health, their family, everything was fine. Because if we as a services industry where our IP is our people, if our people are not well, it's a big problem for us. So our focus has been people. And then we also wanted to make sure that we continue working. So all the conveniences that are required for people to work from home. So we made sure all the conveniences were available. Now, there were cases where people were traveling. We made sure that they all reached their destinations to their families, so they're close to their families. As we started getting into a few, I would say weeks, months, we started realizing that there was an impact on the work-life balance. It was very, very difficult for people to actually separate their work from their life. The balance was getting even, it had a major problem. And we were worried to the point that we wanted to make sure that people are emotionally and psychologically connected with the organization. It's very, very important in a scenario where you're working, we are a social, beings, being connected with people, meeting them physically and not being there at the moment is an issue. So I think our primary focus was people, their emotional connect, their conveniences, and also a clear thought process around work-life balance. Now I switch gears and then I say, okay, well, that's great. What do we do about our customers? Because they are going through the same pain as we were. And the only area that we could focus was that what do we do that we provide innovative solutions to our customers so their services are relevant in the market today. So whatever we do should have relevance to what they deliver on. So people, then our customers, and then of course, cost management is critical because guess what? If you don't have the working capital, everything else becomes an issue. We were at the same time making sure there's well-being and safety of our people. All right. So the clear lesson that has come out of all this right now for us is resilience to the disruptive events that are happening. All right. How do we be resilient? Because this is not the first time it's happening. This will not be the last time it's happening. The other thing is the new normal. Everybody's talking about the new normal. And my biggest question is, what is the new normal? Defining the new normal. I think besides just keeping our people focused on what they are doing, we've started thinking about what the new normal is going to look like. And we are partnering with our customers. We are partnering with our peers, our service providers, even talking to the regulatory bodies just to understand how they are perceiving this problem and what are they planning to do to define what the new normal is going to look like. So while we are doing everything that's possible in terms of social distancing and safety of our people, I think our current focus right now with our peers in the industry is defining what the new normal is going to be. Srikanth?
Thank you, Ashok. That was brilliant. And I'm not going to repeat too much because I think a lot of what Ashok said is probably what I would have said if I went first. Leadership is always important in any organization, but it's more important, it's absolutely critical during a time of crisis, a crisis like this, right? And in my book of leadership, the most important thing is providing clarity to the organization and optimism to the organization. So of course, with speed and clarity, certainly, but I think it's not just speed and clarity, but optimism. When this crisis hit, the first thing we realized was that, look, we've always said that if we have to take great care of our clients, we have to take great care of our people. And that's really how it happens. but it becomes even more important when you realize that, look, this is a huge crisis that affects all our people. So emotional well-being of our people became the first most important thing. Apart from the things that Ashok has already mentioned, we had to ensure that every single Fractalite was safe and was in a place that they could do their work. But we started to think of the Fractal family, the entire extended family of every Fractalite as part of Fractal, because really it was such a crisis that one person in your family gets affected, she or he will also get affected, and it just blows from there. So taking a full view of the family of Fractalites and thinking of that as one extended family, which meant that we're essentially talking of 10,000 people. So 1,700, 1,800 Fractalites multiplied by 5 or 6, it's 10,000 people we're taking care of. And we engaged our critical events team called Facet, which basically started looking at these and took good care of our people, emotional well-being of our people. We started polling them on an everyday basis how they're doing. So we started to figure out very early on that people, first they were looking at safety and health as concerns, but soon after that, they were exhausted, they were anxious, and how do we help them with their anxiety? So taking that entire approach around making sure that people are well, emotionally and physically was super important. This included sending them nudges, helping them in doing some virtual coffee sessions with them. How do we make sure that our people are overall in a good place? And after a few weeks, we also realized that mental health was a very important challenge. How do we help extend them some mental health help? Because everybody is dealing with it in a different way, and not everyone is able to cope with it. And how do we help people cope? Then second thing was, like I think Ashok has also pointed out, clients are also people. They're going through exactly the same thing. Making the human to human connection with our clients, obviously keeping them posted was super important, which we did. Stabilizing the delivery and operations, especially work from home. Thankfully, we had invested in that kind of infrastructure many years back, so it was very smooth, but stabilizing the operation was that. Then, as Ashok also mentioned, managing cost, managing expenses, managing capital, cash flows, liquidity, those are the ones we did. These were the tracks that we're working on. And then, like Ashok mentioned, we looked at what is the new normal or what is the accelerated recovery track. When we recover, when we come out of this in a way, how can we recover very fast and how can we accelerate our recovery by investing in things that become important? For example, we know that consumer behavior is going to change dramatically through this crisis, right? People are going to trade into downward in terms of categories. They may become promotion sensitive. They might buy less of some products. They might move their purchases online. Similarly, companies are going to change their behavior. They might work more from home. So we had to study how companies and consumers will change and help our clients also assess that change, but also invest in trends like data engineering. Like that's becoming very important because now people are migrating their stuff to the cloud. How do you help them in cloud engineering related stuff? Automation and AI have become even more important. So some of the businesses that Fractal does have become super relevant. So how do you make sure that we are there for them? Even supply chain. How do you invest in those kinds of capabilities that the clients are going to need, not just right now, but as we recover? That was our track 7. And then finally, our track 8, most importantly, was how do we respond to the crisis itself, just from helping the community standpoint. We just can't be a part of the problem. We have to be a part of the solution. So we started working with a number of different states around the country in India and a number of cities around the world, hospitals around the world. Fractal has Cure.ai, which is a X-ray AI solution, which we immediately got repurposed for COVID. We got the Central European approval, and now it has been deployed in different parts of the world, including Italy, Mexico, UK, US, Pakistan, India, etc., 50 sites around the world. And it is basically helping in the diagnostics, in progression monitoring, as well as in discharge decisions, the X-ray AI technology. So that's something we deployed. Most of them were free of cost. Also, we started working with the war room efforts of Karnataka, city of Mumbai, and the state of Telangana, right? So that we can help them make minute-by-minute decisions around how to predict the spread of the disease, how to create hospital capacity, how do we make sure that when you reopen the economy, it's in a safe manner, how do you communicate with the citizens, how do you enforce compliance of laws, all of these things, they needed more AI. So start doing that. So these were the 8 tracks we created around, first was employee well-being, second was around clients, reaching out to clients. Third was around stabilizing operations. Fourth was expenses. Fifth was building various scenarios and looking at how Fractal survives in those scenarios. Six was around making sure that our liquidity is intact. 7 was investing in accelerated recovery, and 8 was investing in global COVID-19 efforts. So that's what we did to stabilize the overall business. And we actually thought, in a scenario standpoint, we thought Fractal could be, maybe 20% down in revenue. It could be even more down in revenue, because that's the nature of the crisis. You don't know. You have to be optimistic about the future, but you have to also be real that the worst could happen. So how do you prepare for the worst, but also build for the future? And luckily and fortunately for us, AI, while traditionally has always been a discretionary investment, in this crisis, it has become a mission critical investment. Discretionary, but mission critical. And our business actually has gone up, and surprisingly enough, so that all worked out, all the investment that we made, all the work that we did actually worked out for us.
So Shrikant, thanks so much. That was, Ashok and Shrikant, obviously in our organization in Pricewaterhouse, obviously, many of these points resonate a lot, because safety of our people was very important. And now, as we are into 3 months down, obviously security is becoming extremely important. So that's about the future. That's about creating the business. Obviously, things are settling down, right, as we get along, right? I think at some level, we're all getting used to it. And will it be another few months? Will it actually last longer? Will there be a vaccine that will make sure that you don't get a flu? I think that's a big question mark. And, I have full confidence in our bodies, right? Because our bodies will create antibodies which will fight this. And obviously, we'll be far more resilient as a species to actually overcome this challenge. But there will be, but within all this, right, as we get to what should we be doing? So I'm going to rephrase this question again and speak to you. What should the approach of organizations be if this is what the normal is going to be? Obviously, things will become better, but the next 6 months is going to be a bit of, a bit of uncertainty in that respect. But we've already learned our lessons. What will your approach be? And most importantly, how do we want our people to approach this? What is an advice for them? Shrikant, you want to go first?
Look, I think the world, as we know, has changed quite a bit, right? And first thing is for us to accept the change. I think I have seen that the world in general, many people, including people in our organization, are still resisting the idea that they feel like the world should just go back to the way it was a few months back, just if we could rewind the clock by a few months. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. The cheese has moved. We have to move with the cheese. That's very clear, right? But I fundamentally also believe that every crisis reveals its own opportunities, big new things that will come up. There's always some winners in every crisis. And you might say, look, there is nothing. There's such pessimism right now that there's nothing that can win out of that. But of course, we know Zoom and others have zoomed during this time. But when you look at your own business, what are those areas where you see are the bright spots, the ones that are green shoots, which are actually working very well? So like I've told you already, we were looking at, okay, how does the consumer behavior change? How do we help our clients navigate the shifting consumer landscape? More and more companies are thinking, can I go direct to consumer, right? Because they are seeing that this whole supply chain, etc., has been a disruption. Can I really invest more in e-commerce? Many of them are thinking, how do I automate my supply chain end to end so that there is no likelihood of disruption? How do you have a much better sensing of demand from the consumer directly, rather than having these very antiquated forecasting models that people have been using? How do I make sure that my workloads are all moving on the cloud? How do I secure my infrastructure from a cybersecurity risk standpoint, which have also gone up significantly? So these are many opportunities that have sprung up, which means that these are the ways in places where we can invest ahead of the curve, so that when clients actually are looking for these, we are there for them. So that's really how we have thought about it. We said, look, we've always invested 10 to 12% of our revenues on R&D, on new products. We said, let's move that 10 to 12% in areas which will be strong after this crisis, and therefore we are ready for them. So my general advice to people have been, move with the tide, look at the bright side. There is something which is a bright side. Let's invest behind it, because you know what, we can crib about whatever's happened, but we have to look at the future and invest towards that future that is there. And for everyone who's listening, I would just say the same thing. You can complain as long as you want about what has already happened. Why not? Why me, right? The question always is, why me? Why am I going through this? And thankfully, in this case, you can't say why me, because you know that the whole world is experiencing this. But even if you feel like, why am I suffering the brunt of this? You can say, why not? The answer is always, why not? It's just random, right? I got the brunt of it. But at this point of time, we have to sort of move forward and invest in those areas from a career standpoint where you think is future. And I think that will be far more fruitful than sort of thinking about the past.
Sure. Ashok, what are your views?
Yeah, so I will catch on to two things that Shrikant has said. Why me? And, why not? So it's very interesting, Shrikant, you said that, because if you look at my WhatsApp tag, it says, why me, why now? Then the next statement is, where there's a will, there is a way. Okay. And then the third statement says, take one step at a time. So I think it's very well articulated the way you've stated it. In my view, the way I look at it is, and you again very aptly said, if people should read this book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think this is the right time for people to again go back to those basic books. It's a very simple book. People should read it to understand the message that comes out of that book. The way I look at it is that disruption is going to be a part of our lives. I think we should start assuming that disruptions are going to happen, which means change. Change brings opportunity. Whenever there is change, there's opportunity. Now, when that happens, everybody started thinking, and everybody will start thinking differently. But guess what? It's a red ocean. Trust me, if you are thinking there's somebody else thinking exactly the same thing right now. All right. The fact is, what is the change and how do you start thinking about the change? So what I would state is we should start rethinking our future. The moment you start thinking about the future, everything will fall into place. So let me play a small script that I would say. We should start thinking the future by in the life of Mrs. and Mr. John Doe. What they did a day ago to what they will do today, and what they will like to do tomorrow, because it's changing. The environment is such that things are going to change. How we learn and enhance our knowledge, that's changing. It's going to change. It's not going to remain the same. How are we going to socialize, connect, interact, and communicate? It's going to change again. It's not going to be the same, right? How we service our needs, that's going to change. And each change that I'm talking about brings a different thought process, a different business model, a different way of doing things. And the moment you start thinking a different way of doing things, trust me, there are avenues that start opening up. How do we do business? I think Shrikant is very well articulated about the value chain, the supply chain, the data analytics, technologies, the way the technologies are evolving. All that will now become, I would think, mainstream. If they're not already mainstream, they're soon going to become mainstream. And I think the biggest area and a signal to us is, how is our healthcare and health support environment going to change? So the moment you start addressing these and you're looking at these, because this is in your own life, I think you will start understanding what we need to do as individuals, as organizations to bring a change. And I think this change is not just people within ourselves, it's the organizations, but it's also the government bodies, the regulatory bodies. Everybody will have to start thinking very differently from the way they've been thinking. But the basic fundamental questions have to be asked, what our life is going to be in the future. And I think to do that, there'll be two things that'll happen, which will give you a signal. One, for everybody, what are the current demands and what do I need to do and how I can play to the current demands? Right? How can I influence the current demands? A very clear example, India did not manufacture PPE kits 2 months ago. Today is the second largest producer. So it's a clear example. There was a problem statement. There is a demand. Let's catch on to it. And then at the same time, when you're thinking about the future, which is the latent needs, we should start thinking about what the latent needs would look like And if I'm going to consume it, trust me, there are several others who are going to consume the same service, same need, same demand. So if we start thinking as an organization, as people, I think we're moving on the right track.
Sure. No, thanks so much, Ashok, for that. Now, I have everyone has been talking about, role of technology in industry, role of technologists within industry. Since I have an eminent panel, right, and two really senior technologists, right, people who've actually created things, I want to actually put you in the spot out there. There are certain industries that have actually got disrupted, right? There's obviously the travel industry, there's the hospitality industry, and of course, bits and parts of the entertainment industry, right? Anything which was physical. Uh, Let me ask you, obviously everyone has been speaking about the industries that are doing well and the role of a technologist there. But in these ones that have got disrupted, what would the role of technologists be? And can technology solve a problem out here with speed, right? Uh, Ashok, over to you.
Put me on the spot. Okay, so I will just give you a quick preamble of the way I think about a situation, right? We've gone through an industrial revolution, mechanical power, electricity, and then there's technological advancements. And if we really see what has happened from semiconductors to internet to mobile to data, which is now prevalent, to virtual and immersive experiences. So we are not there right now, but it's going to be a reality relatively soon. If I look at our last century till date, we've had the Spanish flu. It was a pandemic. We never learned through it, right? That's a strong message that came our way, but we never got onto it. There were crisis recessions, whether it's 78, 90, 2001, 2008, and now COVID, right? In all this, what was happening was, if you look at what China did, they took away the entire blue-collar job. India took away the services job. And today, we are at a point where when you start looking at stuff, the current situation is not only there is COVID, there is challenges in Brexit, EU, global trade imbalance, nationalism, and now COVID. It comes and hits us, right? And there are a lot of, as you mentioned, real estate. I believe real estate, transport industry, travel, hospitality, all of them are going to get impacted. And when we look at technology, when I start looking at technology, I believe that the focus would be more on, again, on data analytics of what people want, when do they want, how do they want. See, the whole experience of people or millennials is instant gratification. And the fact is instant gratification at a cost point. And what's that cost point? And I believe that any technology that is enabling these businesses to start focusing on, giving instant gratification at a cost point to what the person wants, and that can only come from what people's experiences are through the data analytics. And I believe that'll be the biggest thing that's going to take place. All right. Now, at the same time, there's going to be another thing that's going to happen in these industries. There's going to be a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Because guess what? This is survival of the fittest right now. The fact is, there are opportunities for acquisitions. People are going to actually focus on these acquisitions and mergers just to keep themselves relevant. I believe the trends that we saw where contract manufacturers were tying up with the third-party logistics to become a 4PL, I believe the same thing is going to start happening where the transport industry is going to tie up with the leisure industry and so it's not just going to be acquisitions of a big fish eating a small fish in their own industry, but it's going to go across. So it's going to be within the value chains itself. So I foresee that two aspects: one, mergers and acquisitions, but across the value chain, and two, a lot of effort is going to go towards the data side to do the analytics to find out, what is required by the people for themselves.
We were talking about disruption in industry, right? And obviously, with technology, being able to solve problems in speed. But what I wanted to do was to actually put both you and Ashok at the spot. So I wanted you to answer the questions around the in the industries that have got disrupted the most. which is really tourism, hospitality, real estate, or entertainment, right? So role of a technologist in these industries to solve
Entertainment
the
is not
problem.
got impacted, by the way, Sudhir. As a matter of
Yes,
fact, entertainment
it's
has,
only the physical part
it
of
has
the
been a
entertainment is
major
got
shift.
impacted.
Yeah, it's a major shift because a lot of live streaming, a lot of stuff that's happening. So entertainment is moved in a completely different direction. That's the way these other industries will have to move as well. Sorry, Shrikant, I interjected there. I
Yeah,
apologize.
no problem. So I think every business today is a tech business, right? I mean, I will tell you what the CEO of L'Oreal, one of the largest beauty companies in the world, said 2 years back. He said, "Look, we've been a very successful beauty company, but in the next 2 years, we want to move from a beauty to a beauty tech company." Right? So that's how L'Oreal is thinking. Mastercard a few years ago said, "We are not a financial services company. We don't just do card payments. We're a tech company." And they have enjoyed 10 times revenue multiples, just like any other Bay Area tech company, right? And you've seen the rise of finance companies have become fintech, health companies have become health tech, education companies have become ed tech, right? And therefore all other industries also have to have a tech in them, right? They have to become a tech business. That's number one. Number two is all the companies that have suffered during these pandemic. Of course, some of them are completely, it was just not possible for them to deliver a physical commodity a physical good in this kind of a crisis. But in general, a crisis like this actually makes the weaker players, the trends that are already there, become exacerbated, right? If people have been talking about cinema halls and theaters, that that business model is questionable considering Netflix and so on. But a crisis like this just kills them, right? So no offense to those industries, and of course, my sympathies for that. But I think what I'm trying to say is that these kinds of trends actually exacerbate what are already there. The weaker players, so the weaker industries, get eliminated during this period. Like malls were already dying in America, for example, and suddenly malls are getting really badly hit. So that's the second point. A third point is, if I were to reinvent myself in this as a tech business, I have to think of 5 things in my opinion. I'll just tell you very quickly what those 5 things are. Number one is that, especially in this kind of a crisis, I have to see how do I digitally serve my consumers in a different way, right? How do I digitally adapt my business model, especially when I can't really physically serve them, right? It's very hard, but it has to be done because there is a disruptive player at the end, and right, any established player should know that there are a few others, small players, nimble players, very good players who are trying to disrupt their core. So unless they also build a new business which is disrupting themselves, they're not going to build that out and be successful. So I think the best example is Netflix. It started DVD by mail, but disrupting Blockbuster, who had physical stores. But then while the DVDs by mail was peaking, the business was doing extraordinarily well, they started the streaming business, and people thought, why are they cannibalizing their own business? And now nobody has DVD by mail, right? But that transition we watched in 2007, 8, 9, 10, when they did that, internet bandwidths were not big, and people thought, you know what, this is just another fancy thing that Reed Hastings is trying, but it has really helped them. So how do you disrupt yourself? That's the first thing. Second thing is, everyone makes new products, right? The rate of success of new products is very low. 95% of new products and ventures fail. So how do you accelerate new product success? By bringing in better data, deeply listening to consumers, etc. So how do you make better products faster? Really have to think through that properly, because need of speed of innovation is very high right now. And the ones who have succeeded are the ones who have quickly innovated and brought out new products. Everybody faced some disruption. Some of them adapted quickly, some of them didn't. That's the second one. Third is, you have to eliminate inefficiencies. A lot of good times can let you have lots of inefficiencies, but bad times will bring focus on efficiencies. How do you cut your supply chain costs? How do you cut your inefficiencies in the product? How do you raise your productivity? How do you create automation? So how do you do all of that? I think that's super important for every business, but in a business that's ridden with crisis, that efficiency is even more important. Fourth is how do we engage with your consumers in a very digital manner? How do you make sure that you're deeply understanding consumers and engaging with them in the newer ways in which customers want to engage with you, right? Your customers and consumers want to engage with you. And finally, how do you increase the speed and quality of decision making in the organization by bringing in data and analytics? If you do all these 5, I think you can navigate this crisis.
Oh, thank you so much. I think that'll be very interesting. So I want to move to this last part of our discussion. And this is all about all this is good, and obviously the participants out here have been hearing various speakers. What does this really mean for them? So I wanted to actually, Shrikant, ask you first, and then Ashok can go second with that. Is that we are all a part of the technology sector, right, or its ecosystem. What is your advice to the audience, and what is your guidance to the audience with the changes that are happening?
The first thing I'll say is that we all know that we are living in this very accelerated knowledge economy where the half-life of knowledge is continuously decreasing. Right? Whatever you started with, whatever you learned in college is getting antiquated very, very fast. So knowledge is important, but learning is super important. So how do you keep abreast of everything that's going on? Don't tell yourself that, look, I had 20 years of education. You know what? I'm ready for next 30 years. I'm going to use that previous 20 years of education. That model worked in the 50s and 60s last century, but this won't work. It won't work right now. So being ready to learn new stuff, saying that, look, I learned all this stuff, but I know new stuff is coming. I have to understand the new stack. Every person who has become antiquated, I've seen, made that decision sometime in their life, sometime mid-career, beginning of the career, end of the career. They made the decision that, look, this newfangled technology, look, I'm not going to do this, right? I'm not going to Facebook, I'm not going to Twitter, or I'm not going to this internet thing or something. They made that choice at one point of time, and then, time passed by and then they became antiquated. So while some of the people in the audience will be very young, but in their career also, they have to make sure that they're always in that zone where they're thinking, look, whatever I think is totally new and ridiculous, doesn't make sense, is going to become a trend. I have to make sure that I'm in touch with that trend because it might become very important. For example, that may be TikTok for all of us here who may not be spending any time making TikTok videos, but you know what, your marketing may not survive if you don't have TikTok, or something like that. So that's about moving to the new stack, keeping learning. Second thing I would say is focus on first principles, right? Every single problem in the world can be solved by first principles. It is the focus from training to understanding first principles. Training gives you a knowledge of tools. You can say, look, I can code in Python. Okay, you can code in Python. Can you solve problems? Right? That's a very different mindset from solving problems to coding in Python, because Python coding is a skill. It is not a way to understand how to solve problems. So how do you get first principles understanding of problems and solving? Because your first principles thinking is going to have a very strong impact on your success. And the last thing, especially for tech people who want a career in tech, is to have an engineering mindset, right? Don't solve any problem thinking that, okay, it will be solved for 2 people or 10 people or 100 people. Most of the problems, once they succeed, they have to be solved at the global level. So if you build anything, have a mindset to think that it will be served in real time to millions of consumers and it has to still work. So how do you bring in an engineering mindset? How do you have first principles thinking? And how do you have a way of continuing to learn? Those are my sort of mantras for people to succeed in careers at this point of time in their life.
Thanks, Shrikant. Ashok, what is your advice?
Yeah, so I think Shrikant is aptly put. I think the day learning stops, everything stops, right? And the fact that people need to start retooling themselves. I think it's important to understand the current environment. It's important to understand what's coming in the future. At least, start speculating what's going to happen in the future, and start reskilling themselves for what's required. The day they stop that, I think everything is going to stop. Now, especially for the technologists, I think I think when Shrikant mentioned, he mentioned various industries, and if you really look at it, whether it was entertainment, whether it's manufacturing, education, pharma, health, social connections for social being, I believe. While we know that there is Facebooks and Instagrams, which are very different social purposes, but social well-being becomes an issue. People are going to look at e-commerce very differently. They're going to be hyper local with the challenges that people are having, hyper local economies that are going to spring up. There's going to be co-op buying because of discounts and the better deals that people are going to start looking at. So when you start opening up and looking at the different industries, whether it's manufacturing, education, pharma, and you can name any, I think there are technologies and the evolution of technologies that have happened in the last few years, which I think people should start picking up on. All right. And again, my view is learning should not be theory. They should be able to apply it. The application is more important than just pure theory. All right. It is also the vocation that is important rather than the theory. So as again, Shrikant said, you should have an engineering mindset. But if I look at the shift that's happened or is happening, which is the 5G, the RF technologies that are coming out, the compute on the cloud that's happening, further advancement in open sources, data analytics, a lot of work happening on the cognitive intelligence side, cognitive technologies. And I think with the way we are, the virtual worlds are going to happen, cybersecurity, data privacy. So you name it, right? It is a passion where you have a passion and where you think you want to go, but there is enough in terms of technologies available, but I think learning should not stop. I think it's a time where you should look at the problems that you are seeing within your industry, within your organization, and see how you can apply these technologies. There has to be, this is true digital transformation. I hear about digital transformation, but I think now is the time when there has to be a true digital transformation that comes into play.
Thanks so much, Ashok and Shrikant. I truly believe, that continuous learning, at any stage of your life, right? Whether you are starting off or, you've achieved what Ashok and Shrikant have achieved, all of us are constantly relearning. In fact, a lot of the things that we do today were not learned by us in school, right? And I can tell you that with the situation that is given, with what Shrikant said about L'Oreal, as well as about MasterCard, who are thinking about actually becoming a technology company. If all companies become a technology company, and if all people become technologists, what are you going to bring to the table, right? And I think that's the evolution of a technologist. So if I can leave that question with you all, to really think through that, because people are trying to solve problems using art and design. People are looking at solving a problem of getting better insights of a certain sector. So what can you bring to the table? Being a technologist is going to be having that compulsory degree for tomorrow. Now, my last question is obviously the most important question. Obviously, we are in the Women in Technology Forum, right? And I'm an ardent believer that the role of women in technology is not only increasing, but it's absolutely very important. Obviously very important with obviously what we've just said, that we need to actually bring in the differentiation of being a technologist. And I do truly believe that women can play a very important role. But Ashok, I want to actually understand your point of view out there and what your comments are on that, and what's your advice to the women in this room?
So first of all, I don't differentiate between women and men when it comes to technology, right? I think that's fundamentally flawed thought process. In my view, I believe women are more committed and diligent when it comes to work. All right, I have yet to see a scenario where that's not been the case. So in my, humble request is that what they're doing well. I think they should, further expand their horizons in other technologies. And again, see, when we use the word technology, technology is either IT or, IT related technologies, but there are technologies that are not IT related as well. And my view is that when we are looking at technology, I think women should, and I ran through a few lists of stuff where I believe they can have an immediate impact, whether it's in the data analytics, cognitive, SaaS-based platforms or whatever. They can play a major role out over there. But not only that, I believe there are opportunities in the area of program management, softer skills, right? Where behavioral science is going to become very, very critical. You look at data at one end, but how do you interpret and bring a behavioral science to it? I think it's going to become critical, and it's going to, have a major impact, and they can influence that a lot. and any area in softer skills that I believe they can play a very important role. So when I look at technology, I don't differentiate between what men can offer or women can offer. I think women are equally, if not more, competent. Shrikant?
Firstly, I think women make great tech leaders. I have had the good fortune of working with some incredible women leaders in tech. Fractal has a third of Fractal's team is women, and it's a great team. So firstly, I think that if there's any mindset or any explicit or implicit such notion that we carry or people around us carry, I think it's important to destroy that notion. It is not true. Number two is that in general, I believe that diversity improves the quality of decisions. It really reduces the error rate. It really makes decisions more robust. And that essentially is also one very important reason why women should play a more and more important role in the decision making around tech, around organizations and so on. We have a huge opportunity in India to provide that kind of a route to women. Right? I think Indian government has taken some actions around making sure that for policies there were great intentions in releasing policies that are friendly to women, and some of them have had positive impact, and some of them may, unfortunately, because of unintended consequences, have negative impact. But I think the important thing is that across all organizations, all leaders, and especially I'm appealing to all the women leaders out here, just look at your women members in your team and help them, promote them, encourage them, guide them, coach them. Of course, they can be a good men coaches also, but I think women will relate more with a women leader who can coach them, women role models. So all of us men who are in this room should see how to sort of make sure that there are more women in the leadership places, and the women leaders in this forum should look at how can I make sure that the women in my team are promoted. One of the studies of McKinsey showed that that it's actually women could be the biggest bottleneck for women's success sometimes, and women are harsher on promotion decisions, etc., for other women, and that I think is also a problem we need to solve for, because if eventually we need a 50-50 representation of women and men across all levels of every organization. That's what is the goal in the next few years. It might become more than 50% of women because as you already probably know, if you look at education, grad level and post-grad level, there are more women graduating than men in many parts of the world. And it's likely to happen in every part of the world because women tend to be more diligent around education, and women, and therefore it's possible that in the next 10, 20 years, women will actually have bigger role in the world of tech and in all organizations than men have, right? Like they have right now. So my sort of suggestion is that be the change that makes this happen. If you're a senior woman leader, help, and if you're a junior woman leader, then have that conversation. Feel free to speak up for yourself and push your career as much as anyone else should do, because I think the next 50 to 100 years will belong to women, in my opinion.
Thanks so much, Shrikant and Ashok, for your views. Absolutely agree with you. And I'm hoping that, with the changes of our work environment and with the ability for senior people to work from home and achieve outcomes, we will see a lot more women who will come forth and come back to work and actually take up those roles. I truly believe that, on key decisions, the diversity of inputs that comes in is absolutely important, and there's no differentiation. So, obviously we're going to look forward to that. Now, with that, obviously, we've come to the end of our session, and I'm hoping that all of you have learned something from some of the stuff that we've spoken. But I truly believe that with the inputs that we have got, with the changes that are happening, I think we are in a time where obviously the speed of our decisions will matter a lot. We will come across things that are new to us. We will deal with uncertainties as we go through. But absolutely, I think there is nothing that is going to be actually stopping us to actually overcome this crisis. And I truly believe that 2020 will make us much stronger to embrace on what we are going to be coming into 2021 and beyond. With that, Shrikant, Ashok, thank you so much. And I thank you all for hearing us patiently. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shrikant, Ashok, and Sudhir.